So let's talk about Plague Doctor. Surgical Bloodletting for Season 7 is going to be absolutely insane. It didn't receive very many changes going into Season 7 from Season 6. They actually made it a little bit better just due to some of the bleeding mechanics that were on it. But embrace the art of sharp knives and relentless regeneration. With the life stacking Surgical Bloodletting Plague Doctor, they build that turns your own vitality into a deadly weapon. This is a life stacker build. It's going to make you very tanky while you're able to kill a lot of the in-game bosses quite easily. So let's check out some of the pros and cons of it. First, once again, you do have insane survivability with life stacking mechanics. The more life you get, the more additive physical damage that you get with the build. Your damage is partially your life pool. So once again, just more of that you stack, the better you're going to have with the build, the better damage you're going to get. You also really have good movement with the melee build, right? So you get access to Randy the Rat. You will get a mount that you can jump on that lets you run around much quicker. You also have a large AoE vortex. The skill is a really cool large AoE. You can see here that we pretty much cover the screen top to bottom. It's really nice. And we have great sustain with leech mechanics. You're never going to feel like you're running out of mana. And if you do get hit by something, as long as it doesn't one-tap you, most of the time you're just going to suck all your life right back, especially because you have such a large life pool. It's going to feel really nice whenever you are fighting those tankier targets or you get any of those smaller hits. You don't really notice taking much damage unless it one-shots you. Now, you are going to have to level as a poison caster. You can level with the surgical bloodletting skill. I even had a guide for it last season. This is a viable option. It's just a little bit harder to do. Caster is just a bit easier to level with at the beginning because you get lots of sources of skill damage. Spells also just scale differently than attack damage does in the game, so it just feels better. Now, I will say that while you are leveling, if you run into like a Glimmer Fury, it's a bow, you could 100% just swap to that Glimmer Fury and absolutely annihilate all of normal. So that is something just to keep in mind. Now, you will also need Divine Piercing. It's the chest augment. This is something that you'll get somewhere in the mid to late game. But this is really what opens the build up, as normally whenever we attack with our surgical bloodletting, it just ricochets between and bounces between all the different targets. And this is okay, but we really want to be able to just get hits on the entire area, like in a vortex, and that's what our chest augment is going to do, right? So this gives you way more coverage and just feels way better while you're farming. So that is pretty much a requirement for the build. Now, you also do not have any direct damage reduction on the build. A lot of classes have like physical or magical damage reduction. You do not get this on Plague Doctor. You have such a high life pool that you don't particularly need that. You do have a flask proc that will allow you to get some damage reduction, but you're going to have to manually cast that in order to get it. And it's only like a few seconds that you have that duration, right? Or that damage reduction. Let's talk about how we're going to level the build in our skill trees. Once again, we are leveling with Poison Caster. So levels 1 through 7, you're going to be taking Crematus, dump 7 points into that, give the most damage as you can on it. At level 8, you get access to Plague of Rats. If you run into any bloaters at the very beginning of the game, you can use Plague of Rats for those. Put this on your second skill bar. This will help a ton with those tanky-ass targets. At level 8, same thing. Just continue blasting your points into Crematus. You want to get as much damage on this as you can. I would recommend that you put points into energy because we're putting so many points into Crematus early on. It is going to have a high mana cost. So try and put some points into energy. Try and find items that have mana on them, especially charms. You find like a charm that has 30 or 40 mana on it. This can go a really long way, as well as you're going to want some sustain from life and mana on kill. So again, if you can find that on a charm, you have it indefinitely instead of it being on your gear and you end up swapping gear out and then now you've lost your sustain. So definitely utilize that charm slot to try and find those things. And still going to be using the Plague of Rats for the single target. You're most likely going to be killing Gurag with Plague of Rats. However, if you get to level 16, you do get the option to go into Plague Master, right? This is a little AoE circle that you'll put on the ground, and you can make this circle much bigger as you get levels, but you're going to be using this to kill mobs with. And also at this level, you can continue using your Plague of Rats to kill bosses with, right? Or those tankier targets. So at level 16, just blast all your points into Plague Master, and then on your second bar, you'll still have this Plague of Rats, and you'll just continue blasting points into that. Once you've maxed out your Plague Master, we're going to start working on synergies. At this level, you're probably not going to have very many points because you had to travel here, but you could put 1 point into Chant, right, just to get some increased damage to Plague monsters. Then at level 24, we have some different options for bossing, but we're going to blast all of our points once again into Plague Master, get 1 point over here into our, I forgot what this is called off the top of my head. This gives you life and resistances, and then the rest of it goes into chant. This is our increased damage to plagued monsters, right? And then for bossing, we can respec our tree here, and we're going to go for Jar of Flies. This is basically going to throw a jar that will have a bunch of projectiles that come out that will hit the boss. You can get a ton of extra projectiles within the sub-skill tree. It's going to be a much better option for killing your bosses at this level, right? And then we'll put the rest of our points into Plague of Rats. This is a damage synergy for Jar of Flies. It'll give it more damage without actually increasing its mana cost, right? It's also a way to extend its damage after you've put 20 hard points into it. At level 30, continue putting points into synergies for Plague Master. You can see we have this chant. We've got 14 points into it now. We've got 1 point into Randy. We gain access to that at level 30. This is what's going to help us be able to move around a little bit. Right now, he's just going to be a summon that will tank targets for you. It's going to be a meat shield. And then at level 40 is when we finally gain access to our augment tree. So at this point, we're going to respec one more time. We'll put our points into Crematus. We're going to be using this as our main skill to clear with. It feels much better than Plague Master does. And at this point, we're pretty much just flying. So we'll put 20 points into Crematus and then 20 points into, or start maxing out our Toxic Blast to give our Crematus more damage. And of course, don't forget to put your 1 point wonders in. We get Lifeblood Aura. Make sure you activate this aura on your skill tree. I can show you how to do that real quick. So you just click down here, right? And this is where you can activate and deactivate your auras on the bottom left. Make sure you turn that on. Get 1 point into your life and resistance passive here. As you get skill points, this will increase, so you'll just get free life that way. And then make sure you get 1 point into Randy so that you can put on the augment that makes Randy zoom around, right? You're going to be riding Randy around the campaign. Level 70, continue maxing out synergies for Crematus. You can see we have Oops here. We have our Toxic Flask is maxed out. And we start putting more points into our chant. And then finally, at level 100, we have our Crematus tree. Same things, main skill, all of its synergies, 1 point wonders and everything that we kind of talked about a second ago. And then when you finally do make that transition to Bloodletting, I do have its full tree available here as well. It's kind of the same deal. We're going to put 20 points into Surgical Bloodletting. That's the main skill. And then from there, make sure that you max out your Elbozo. I did the wrong one. Chat, we did the wrong one. Oh no. Oh no. Not like this. All right. This is how you do it. You're going to put 20 points into Surgical Bloodletting. You're going to put 20 points into Devout Doctor, 20 points in Crow Mask, right? 20 points into Booster Shot. Make sure you grab all this juice here. Make sure you put 1 point into Toxic Flask. So that way you can debuff enemies or give yourself a big buff. And that way you can zoom around on Randy, right? And then you put the rest into blood. That's what it's supposed to look like. Not like this. All right. I'll put this one down here. Now we'll just delete it. It's fine. It's fine. I'm going to come back in here. I'm going to come back in here and fix this one. Yo, Luca, can you give me a Bloodletting tree? We'll fix that with the actual like level 20 instead of it being 46, so that's not too crazy. Okay. No worries. Sub-skill trees. Sub-skill trees were new in Season 5. You click on these plus signs right here. These are going to open up a window that looks like this, right? You get 1 point for every 5 character levels, so you can start blasting these as soon as you hit level 5. Now, in the written guide, I do have all of our different trees that we're going to want to go for, like Bloodletting. You can see our best DPS option, our fastest farming option. So you're able to click through these and just kind of follow the pathing that I have for them, right? The poison leveling, we're only going to be using this up until a certain point, like level 100 or so. And then once we actually transition into our Bloodletting, obviously then we'll change over to these other trees, right? And make sure that you also change your Toxic Flask if you're using that from when you were leveling over to this variant, right? Cool, easy peasy. Now, for attribute allocation, While you're leveling, you're going to put 2 points intelligence, 2 points vitality. The rest we will put into energy, just enough to feel comfortable. Like I said, at the very beginning of the game, we're going to be blasting so many points into our main skill that it's really going to help having a larger mana pool, especially whenever you do get some mana on kill. If you only have 40 mana and you have 10 mana on kill and you kill a bunch of monsters, yeah, you have all your mana back, but you could have had a lot more, right? You're not being super efficient with that resource that you have available to you and being able to kill more things. So a little bit of energy goes a super long way. Once you transition to bloodletting, all vitality, right? That vitality is giving us physical damage based on your maximum life. So it's very important that you dump all your points in vitality. If you're having trouble early on with dexterity, if you didn't get enough ignore target defense, or you're just having trouble hitting monsters, you can put some points into dexterity. This will help you with attack rating, as dexterity does give you a little bit of attack rating. That can help, but ideally you really just want to blast all your points into vitality. You shouldn't have too many issues with hitting. Now, if we're gearing, we do have a bunch of workable suggestions that are available on the written guide. I have everything from leveling, budget, mid-game, end-game. So let's talk about it. First of all, for leveling, it's going to be a little bit different because we are going to be using that poison caster. I would not recommend that you stop and try and farm for any specific satanics. It is a waste of your time. You are naturally just going to drop satanics during your playthrough. If they make sense for the build, by all means use them, right? However, do not stop to farm for them. You are wasting your time. Rune words, however, are pretty much guaranteed, right? You are going to get the runes to make rune words for practically free from doing your Act 1 quest. However, you do need to look out for the bases. The bases is probably the harder part of this. There are some rune words in here that are extremely cheap, that are very powerful, that I do recommend you pump into, right? So let's talk about those and some of the other items. On your normal through mythic items, because this is mainly what you're going to be looking for while you level, are things like poison skill damage, poison magic skill damage, faster cast rate, sustain with life meant on kill, intelligence, attributes, life percent to stay alive. Those are just like your basic affixes that you're looking for on items as you level up. Obviously, if you can find mythic items that have multiple of these, wear them, right? But that's pretty much all it takes in order to level any character from 1 to 100, especially casters, right? Now, while you're going through, you might end up finding like a four socket sword. You can make Sky Song on that, right? Super cheap. That's all Nut Rex. This is basically the spirit, if you will, of Hero Siege. For offhands, same deal, but we do have the option to make Divine Contemplation. This can give you an absolute shitload of resistances. This is essentially the ancient pledge of Hero Siege. Helmets, if you're having trouble with sustain, you can make Scholar. Also, something to mention on these bases, you can get additional affixes. If you find, a 2-socket helmet that has 100 life on it, by all means use it. You just gained 100 life, right? For chest pieces, there's a new rune word in Season 7. It's called Fog. This thing is like smoke from D2. This gives you a shitload of resistances and a bunch of hit recovery. It's actually really, really nice. So you could pair this with that Divine Contemplation, and you're going to feel so damn good while you're leveling, right? These two together is going to give you like 80, 90 all res. Very, very nice. Otherwise, if you're going for the max damage, we would actually go for Toxicarius, right? It's going to give us the most amount of damage on our poison skill. You can see what that looks like here. Up to 4 skills. We get some poison skill damage. We get some 10. Very, very nice. Toxicarius. And then you can also make Shadow at level 17. This will give you, it's basically the stealth. It gives you a bunch of movement speed, faster cast rate, that sort of thing. For gloves, just looking for any normal through mythics. Boots, same thing. Movement speed is probably your priority on your boots, as you want to be able to move through the zones very quickly. In order to do that, you can make quick steps. These can be used as early as level 31. You get up to 70% on the actual roll plus the items. So you get a ton of movement speed on quick steps. I would recommend just use these for quite a while, as you don't really have a good movement skill with the Plague Doctor. However, there are ghosts available. These are going to be the most amount of damage, as well as you do get phasing. And phasing is really nice, being able to just walk through enemies and not, get obstructed by them. Belts, whatever you can find. Rings, whatever you can find. Amulets, whatever you can find. And charms. Don't forget about your charms. You can get so much juice on charms to really help you stay alive, especially with life and life percent, because we are going to be a life stacker at some point. Find charms with life. 350 life isn't uncommon to find on charms. You can find like large charms with 14%, 15% life on them. It's crazy. So definitely be trying to look for those while you're leveling up. It'll make a big difference when you do make that transition. So as we get to level 100, we are looking to make that transition into surgical bloodletting. So let's talk about some of the different gearing that we have available here, as well as I do have some example setups of some of these items so you can get an idea of how this all pieces together and what gear you might want to look at getting to be able to move into the surgical bloodletting. It's also free to respec, right? You can respec your trees at any time. So you can see, okay, I have this gear, let's put it on, respec, see if it works. If I need maybe a little bit more, you can just switch right back, right? No big deal. So for weapons, a lot of options here. Nomad Sand Slicer, Dante's Demon Blade, Steve's Mighty Sword. All of these are really nice options. Steve's going to say one-hander, so you're going to have the option to be a bit tankier by having a shield on. If you feel like you're having issues with resistances early on, this could be a good way to mitigate that. Otherwise, these big two-hander weapons have a ton of attack damage on them that will carry you quite far. And with Dante's Demon Blade, you have up to 5 sockets. You could throw a bunch of nut runes in here just to get some additional attack speed. We also have on surgical bloodletting can be used as a range skill, right? It is technically a range skill, so you can use things like guns and bows. So you can see the attack rifle has a ton of attack damage. You get crit chance, you get deadly blow, you get all sorts of use. T4 attack rifle is actually insane. I used it for quite a while. There's also cheap rune words. You can make Sky Song still. This did get nerfed in Season 7. It got a 50% effectiveness nerf, so it's not going to have nearly as much attack damage on it as it used to. You can see this one has 333 versus the typical like 600. Ravager also, this is on a one-hander base, but Ravager goes up to that like 600 era, which is really nice. You get a bunch of really good stats on Ravager, but you will need a high rune in order to make Ravager, right? Same thing for Aurora's Might and Judge. Both these are going to require those high runes, but they have really good attack damage. And Aurora's Might, once again, if you're having trouble with resistances, this gives you up to a level 28 Lunar Aura, right? This is going to give you a shitload of resistances. I believe, chat, what is it? At level 28, it's like 60% all res or something. It's wild. So that can be a really good option if you're having trouble with those resistances early, as well as you get ignore target defense. And this is really important for being able to hit monsters, right? Also in the budget section, I did put Shadow Carver and Shadow Fury because you can technically drop these items from Hell 1 Reaper, right? I'm not sure you're going to go into a Hell 1 Reaper just because you probably want to save them for Hell 5, but getting to Hell 5 and even killing that Uber Reaper in Hell 5, or other people being able to do it in your party, or if you're in trade and you have access to the auction house, these things aren't that hard to get, right? And they're so damn strong. You can use either one because you have the ability to play melee or ranged. These things will make it so that you essentially have resolute technique from PoE. You can no longer miss, so you don't have to worry about getting attack rating or north target defense. However, you cannot crit. So then you can kind of drop the crit items and start working towards getting the crit, and in the place of that, you'll put a lot of enhanced damage items on your character to scale its damage, right? So a little bit different way of building the character. I'm not going to be showing a lot of the enhanced damage side of it here because a lot of that stuff it's just mythic items. You pick up mythic rings, amulets, gloves, charms, and throw as much ED as you can on there to really stack up this attack damage, as well as to exploit the Reaper's Culling proc, right? Because you get a bunch of additional damage with that Reaper Culling proc. So that's what the shadow weapons are all about, right? So you cannot crit with these. You're going to go enhanced damage. For offhands, bunch of options. I like Gem and Crested Tower. You can go Renguard. This gives you a bunch of crit chance. You get up to 25% deadly blow. That's a lot, right? You also get those 4 sockets. You could put runes in it for resistances. You could put more Zoes in there if you want more deadly blow. Whatever you got to do. Or life, you could throw and some Wildren jewels in there just to get more life. Whatever works for you. Helmets, you're probably going to be on Flesh Ripper for quite a while, as this does give you 15% crit chance. You get up to 20% all resistance. However, there are some other options here, right? Like Legionnaire, it's most likely what you want to go to, but you are going to need 3 high runes in order to do that. Even in the budget section or the first bit of hell, finding high runes isn't that hard. You also have access to the auction house. You can sell items to be able to buy those high runes early on. And farming like 3/3 for runic embrace shrines to get high runes is a very viable strat in order to get them, even for SSF. So 3 high runes is not that difficult to get. So I do have that listed here in the budget section. For chest pieces, Fortress is your best option. It just requires a Zo rune, basically one of the lowest of the high runes. This thing is absolutely insane for just a Zo rune. It's going to give you 250% enhanced damage. You get a bunch of resistances. You get so much for this chest. This is basically one of the best in slot chests outside of like Executioners. And then right before you can move into Fortress, there is Cocoon of the Berserker. It's pretty much a lower tier version of that. And you also have Gladstone Goose, which will help you with your resistances, or Mayhem before that. If you if you find an rune and you haven't gotten the pull yet, or you're not able to downgrade your runes for a pull, you could make that Mayhem. So any of these would be perfectly fine, but you really want to make that Fortress. For gloves, I like Siege Breakers. They give you up to 25% ignore target defense. This really helps with being able to hit monsters. You also get enhanced damage and resistances, but if you find or want to buy any of these ones, they're perfectly fine as well. For boots, you're probably on those quick steps. You do want to replace those for Crush Fleets. Crush Fleets are also going to require 3 high runes. This one does have 2 burrs in it, which burrs are typically a bit more expensive on a season start. But once again, farming high runes is not that difficult. You can sell the high runes that you do find if you don't find burrs specifically, and then use those to buy burr runes, right? These things are insane. You get a bunch of skills on them. You also get this agility proc. This agility proc is really important for us because we don't directly have a movement skill. So this is going to give us a ton of movement speed and attack speed to be able to move around with. And if you want to go for something a bit cheaper, Sonic Steps can be really good too, right? They have some value here. You get a bunch of life, and that, it's us being a life stacker, that really helps. And then if you scroll down, I do have a couple more listed here. For belts, Brute's Cord, most likely what you're going to want to go for, as you do get that crit chance. We need to start getting crit chance into our gear. But you could go for Butcher Belt if your crit chance isn't doing too bad. This gives you a bunch of skills, and you get a bunch of all resistance on this as well. For rings, Kodo Wedding Bands are going to give you, they've been buffed. They're now 2 skills and up to 40% movement speed and a bunch of life. These are really, really nice until you can move into Elven Graces. You will want to get Elven Graces just because you get that flat crit chance and crit damage. And they've also been buffed. You can now get up to 2 skills. Until that point, you can use Ring of the Cow Raven. These are basically like budget Elven Graces. And outside of that, if you find some like enhanced damage or crit rings, the mythics, you can wear those. Be really nice options as well. Amulets, you pretty much have to go Ravenclaw, right? If you're not in the ED setup, this gives you just up to 20% crit chance once you crit damage. Pretty much mandatory. There are some other options here if you end up finding them, or if you, like I said, find an ED crit mythic. And then for charms, tons of stuff here. Crit damage, enhanced damage charms. Don't forget about those. You can stack a bunch of life on your like rare and mythic charms and life percent, those sorts of things. Try and find some leech. If you don't have a Witch's Claw, that would be in this section here. Otherwise, just find any mythic, any rare, whatever charm that drops on the ground that has leech on it, like mana leech, throw that on there, or life leech, throw that on, so that you're making sure that you sustain your resources, right? And that you don't die. Otherwise, I do have a bunch of budget charms that are listed in here. Probably out of all of these, I would say that this Anubis charm, because this goes up to 850 life, and this Tall's Deskel going up to 450 life. Both of these are very important, right? Those are both very important. The Hardened Steel Defender goes up to 20% life, also very important. So I would probably prioritize those being a life stacker. Cool. For the mid game, for physical attackers, I do have a full write-up on how to scale your damage if you're not really sure how damage formulas work for hero seeds for physical attackers. So this will give you an idea of like what is ignore target defense, what is deadly blow, what is open wounds, right? This will give you some of that information, as well as at the bottom there's the actual formula for any of you nerds out there. Okay, I do have some example setups that will be in the written guides. You're welcome to take a look at those so you can get an idea of some of the gearing that we put together with different weapon options, right? There's tons and tons in here that you can check out. For weapons, Sidewinder is just a fantastic mid-game option. That's probably what you're going to go to first. It'll either be Sidewinder or like a Candy Crusher, right? So that would be a fantastic option. You get skills, you get attack speed, you get skill movement diminished because we're holding down our right click for the most part. Whenever you use a skill, you have a movement diminish. This reduces that so you're not as slow, right? Very, very nice. Lucy Days is going to be most likely your best single target at this point, right? You do have the extra damage to bleeding monsters. You get a bunch of skills. You get crit damage. You get 75% ignore target defense, so you don't have to worry about your attack rating. It's a very nice weapon if you end up finding one. Glow Stick and Candy Shredder. Candy Shredder can be okay, right? Glow Stick also can be okay. Glow Stick is going to be nice just to have really, really high APS. Unfortunately, this build doesn't really have a skill that scales with APS with like movement, like having like a whirling blades or a quick slash to be able to zoom around the map with. So this isn't as important, but if you find one, by all means, you can use it. Blood Moon Crescents, these are farmed from Amun-Ra. They can roll with fizz skills now, right? You can get 8 fizz skills on this Blood Moon Crescent, and this thing definitely rivals the Sidewinder. From my testing, I found that this Blood Moon Crescent with the 8 skills of fizz was actually better than Sidewinder in most cases, right? You also get 70% movement speed on it. You get 75% skill diminish. It's just really nice, and you get phasing, right? Really nice one-hander. We do have our rune words shown here again. The reason why is you can find exceptional or astral or quantum bases, and then you can make rune words on top of that. So if you find like a 300%, 350, 400% ED base, and then you make a rune word on top of that, it actually becomes quite a cracked weapon. So that is an option. They're just super rare as well. If you are able to farm the bosses, right? Eternity comes from Amun-Ra. Rakul's comes from King Rakul in the Chaos Tower. And Grimbone Scythe will come from Grimbone in your torch, right? Your Niflheim torch, whatever it's called, right? So these can be good options. I'm not a huge fan of the Grimbone, but if you happen to get the key and you don't really have that good of a weapon, this could be a decent option. Eternity has an absolute insane amount of attack damage. This thing's cracked as well. Now, new to Season 7 is Stormslayer. This has up to 40% extra damage to bleeding monsters. I actually slammed this one with a little bit extra. You also get the deadly blow. You get skills. You get so much on Stormslayer. It is a two-hander, so you're going to have to figure out your resistances and your survivability a bit. Fortunately, you are a life stacker, but it is an absolute cracked weapon. Offhand, we have things like Tombstone. I like this one the most. Gives you a ton of life. But you can go with any of these here, right? It'd be perfectly fine if you aren't in a two-hander. Helmets. Try to upgrade your Legionnaire if you're not in one yet, right? Look for a skill base. There's also Nikitas. If you end up dropping a Nikita, or you can pick one up for cheap, this gives you a shitload of deadly blow and can help solve your attack rating issues. Also new in Season 7 is Dragon Knight's Helmet. This comes from Indrixia in the Ruby Gardens, right? So this will give you up to 40% extra damage to burning monsters, and we can actually pair this with Molten Paw, which is a claw that we put on our back bar, right? So this will give us a shitload of damage. This was really used if you are going to do bossing, right? I wouldn't run around with this. You really want the Legionnaire because you get that live by the sword proc, but this is a really nice helmet if you are doing bossing. For chest pieces, if you aren't in a fortress, get a fortress, upgrade it. You can get skills on the base. Yep. Executioner's Cocoon is your upgrade. It's your best in slot damage chest. However, there are some survivability options like Heaven's Might, Azarius' Iron Thorn, Leviathan's Carcass is also insane. 1,000 life, a bunch of percent. This gets up to 6 sockets. You could throw, whatever you want into it. Some Zo runes. For gloves, you're going to want to try and farm out Brawler Fighter Mitts. These come from Sungli, right? This proc here, this +4 does matter. You want to try to get a +4. If this rolls +1, just dice it. I'll be honest with you. Even if I had like shit gloves, I'd probably still dice these if it hit +1. So Yeah, otherwise, ally blocks and gloves can be a decent option, usually pretty cheap. And if you have siege breakers and you're getting several of them, slam them. Hit them with satanic crystals and try and get some fucked up siege breakers. For boots, if you're using those crush fleets, try and find a better base and remake them. Right. Otherwise, you have the option of using either brutal roamers. I just noticed they misspelt brutals on these boots. Brutal roamers or scorching roamers. Brutals obviously being a little bit better because you do take advantage of the physical skills and the damage and the attack damage. However, scorching roamers can be good as well because you have moltening paw. You're able to always ignite enemies, so you are going to be taking advantage of the extra damage to burning monsters and the skills and the speed, but you just kind of miss out on some other things there. These also roll up to 4 sockets. So just, I would still wear this. If I was like farming out the Chaos Tower and I drop Scorching, I would still be super happy as these give you a ton of damage. Which, by the way, that's where these come from, is the Rogue Chaos Towers and the new Codexes of Chaos. Belts. Personally, you're probably going to want to have to go for Gladiator Belt. Farming Recul is much easier now. They made the season mechanic can drop the Coliseum fragments, as well as you can get the Coliseum fragments from the Chaos Tower much easier. So try and farm out a Gladiator King's Belt. You just get so much extra damage with the bleeding monsters on it that it's worth your time. Otherwise, you can slam Butcher Belts and try and get some extra juice on those. Belt of Skulls is also a decent pickup. You get, the Deadly Blow. If you aren't Deadly Blow capped, you get extra damage, attack damage. Really nice belt overall. The best belt here is obviously going to be Girdle. This only comes from Inferno, so if you don't have access to Inferno or the auction house, then obviously you can't get that. But that one is absolutely insane with almost 2,000 life on it, right? For rings, if you are using those Elven Graces, start slapping Satanic Crystals on them. Try and get some extra rolls. Like you see this one I hit physical damage on. Makes quite a big difference. You can get sockets on here, right? Maybe stocking in some more life. We also have the ability to get Azazel Despairs in Hell. I know these are rare, and obviously the Soul Gems are rare, and both of these are expensive, but there are going to be some people out there that run into this. These are best in slot rings, very, very good. If you pick these up on the auction house, if you're one of those people that gets rich early on and can buy one, definitely go that. There are new rings for Season 7, the Pit Artist Carnage. This is okay if you're running the ED variant. I'm not sure I would use this with the crit variant. You'd obviously want to get the crit chance, but maybe you have enough crit chance and you want to pair the Elven Grace with 1 Pit Fighters. That could be a totally valuable option as well. But you will probably have to farm out a Rekul's Ritual Band so that you can mirror your other rings. So if you find a crazy Azazels, definitely get the Rekul's. We also have Sunglees here. Sunglees can be a decent option when paired with like an Elven. Right, these two together could be really nice. Or you could even get Sunglees and slam them and try and get some extra juice and then mirror that extra juice, right? So definitely some options there. For amulets, we have Griffin's Claw. This is going to give us the most amount of crit chance and crit damage. It's basically an upgraded Raven's Claw. However, if you can't find one or buy one, you can slam your Raven Claws and try and get some extra juice on those. If you're running the ED variant, Eagle Claw is your better choice here because it gives you more ED, attack speed, that sort of thing. For charms, be sure you're looking out for those ED crit damage charms. Really, really nice. Your Tablet of the Awakening, you can now put Moonstones in them, right? These are going to give 7% attack speed, dexterity, and strength. So really nice. Otherwise, you can put resistances in them, or you can put your elemental gems. These will give you all attributes so that you're not only taking advantage of vitality, but you're also taking advantage of strength, which does give you attack damage as well. So you're kind of multifaceted with it, right? Here's a bunch of charms that were in the budget section. If you haven't picked these up yet, by all means, grab your Anubis Onks, grab your Hardened Steel Defenders, whatever you need here. And then, since we are playing a Life Stacker build, this can be farmed from Recul. This gives you combat orders, right? This will give you a life and mana buff, right? As well as you get some additional vitality. Okay, let's talk about the end game real quick, right? If we talked about being able to slam items, I'm not going to account for any of that. We didn't slam any of the items in beta, as it's way too random of what you get. So really, the best items here are going to be the ones that work for you. So I do have a couple example setups showing you what this build would look like in cracked endgame gear. You can see we've got the melons, we've got Annies, we've got Fulgi, we've got all the juice on, giving you an idea of what that would look like. For relics, you can see we're wearing Twin Blade, nunchucks, razor blade, butterfly knife. You could opt out the butterfly knife, right? You could go for a commander sword, right? This would give you, oh, it's right there. This would give you up to 100% attack damage if you don't need that additional attack speed or that, because in this build you don't really get a whole lot of movement with attack speed. If you get lucky and you find like a quick slash loaded dice or something, then I would probably opt for the butterfly knife in that case. But most likely the commander sword, you could swap the butterfly knife with, it would be totally fine, right? For potions, the main one you're going to want to get is coffee containers, since we will have a source of burn from Molten Paw. But otherwise, any of these in here will be perfectly fine. I like getting the attack speed ones, but you can go for like a bottle of sake to give you some attack damage and crit damage. Tons of potions available in here. Chest augments, divine piercing, pretty much have to. It's insane quality of life. I suppose you could get away with things like lethal tempo and tempest strikes. The quality of life that you get divine piercing makes these almost impossible to want to pick, right? This will make it, once again, so that whenever you attack, it will wait, I didn't spec it, chat. I didn't spec it out. It'll make it so that you pierce everything, right? Now for hero levels, I do have a whole YouTube video talking about how to spec out your hero level tree. So if you're not sure how to do that, by all means, take a look at that, as the hero level tree doesn't offer a whole lot of power directly. It's going to be more situational based on what you're trying to achieve and what gear you have. So definitely take a look at that. Same thing for glyphs. Glyphs give you no power. They're completely just utility based. So if you're not sure how glyphs work, I do have a full YouTube video talking about all the glyphs in the game. For mercenaries, we're going to be using the Act 1 Night Merc. This is going to give us the most amount of magic find, as mercenaries in Hero Siege are pretty much just magic find bots. So we're going to stack as much magic find on them as we can. Be sure to look through here. We do have some different gearing choices that are available for them. The only thing that you kind of care about with your mercenary is this aura, right? You can get Valkyrie, which will give you fanaticism. It's going to give you a ton of attack speed, or you can get Aurora's Might. That's giving you that huge resistance aura. So if you're having trouble with resistances early, you could put on Aurora's and that will help. Otherwise, honestly, just pick whatever you can out of the items that's giving you the most amount of magic find, because that's all mercenaries really do. Now for loot filters, I do talk about how to set up your loot and highlight filter for physical attackers in game, right? There are presets available, as well as I will have some filters that are able for you to make. So you can see that I made a YouTube video last season that talks about how you actually create your filter before the season starts. I cannot make you one before season 7 starts. Unfortunately, in the season 7 beta and the season 6 client, I can't make them. They don't transfer. For what reason, I don't know, but those will be available. This video and this written guide will be available for you to understand how you can do that before the season starts. And then for endgame filters, I will have these available a couple of days before a couple of days after the season starts, because I have to make them, right? I have to make them in the season and then update all of these guys to have them. We might just put them on the website. I might have a section that just says loot filters, and then you can click for season 7. That actually might be way easier. So we'll definitely do that. If you're a newer player or you just need some additional information, you can see I have a bunch of additional helpful resources: the beginner guide, patch notes, the wiki, tons of information in here for you to check out if you need some additional info. And that's going to wrap up the surgical bloodletting Plague Doctor for season 7. This thing is a monster. If you've never played Plague Doctor, this might be the season to do it. It got buffed last season, and it got buffed this season a bit because of all the new items that are in the game. And if you haven't had a chance to play it, this might be your last chance, because I don't know if it's going to live another season, guys. So with that being said, come check me out live at twitch.tv/Grax_TV, where I play in the season 7 beta, doing a bunch of more testing, and we'll see you in the next video. Bye, guys.